Into the fun that is the Mini Cooper SE. Pat Goss helps you make sure your trailer is safe for the road. Stephanie Hart has smart tips for safely driving in the rain. And we'll test the first ever hybrid minivan from Chrysler, of course. So come drive with us next. Mini Cooper SE. Now, it's actually not the first Mini EV we've driven, as we spent some time in this Mini E 10 years ago during our 30th season. That was a limited release of just 450 lease-only cars here in the States, but we felt it was the most fun green car we'd driven yet. Extremely pleasant, with a nice flutter-like electric sound coupled to good throttle response at all speeds. And we're pretty sure that there'd be many more to follow. Well, it has taken until now for this Cooper SE to finally bring the brand into EV prime time. And we're not entirely sure what took so long. It's not a new chassis, but a modified version of the current Cooper S. And the electric motor that powers it comes from the BMW i3, mounted up front right where the gas engine would be. But since battery placement was not a part of that original design, many engineers were left with fitting them wherever they could, mostly where the fuel tank and transmission would be. 32.6 kilowatt hours worth means only 110 miles of range, not much more than that original Mini E. And while that may be lower than what we'd like to see, there's no denying the transformation has driven the Mini fun factor higher than ever, which is why most people buy a Mini in the first place. So even though you can't venture too far afield, darting in and out of urban traffic is still a joy. Same single joint spring strut suspension up front and multi-link rear as in the Mini Cooper S, with unique tuning, of course. Therefore, lots of feedback from every aspect of the car and even more heightened throttle response than with a gas engine. It's every bit as engaging, if not more so, than the Volkswagen e-Golf, and that's saying a lot. That electric motor has a 135 kilowatt output. That means you're sending about 180 horsepower to the front wheels, a little bit less than what the Cooper S has to offer. But between the absence of engine noise and near instant acceleration, it feels more powerful. Not bad considering it's also about 300 pounds heavier, though the bulk of that weight is not over the front wheels, but low and centered in the chassis. We gauge 0 to 60 at 6.9 seconds. Top speed is 93 miles per hour. There are just two modes for adjusting regen braking, neither of which are aggressive as those that allow for total one-pedal driving. A few aero enhancements have been performed outside to make it more efficient. The grille is mostly closed off and the rear bumper is new. Not to mention the light alloy wheels, which are just plain cool looking, as well as the splashes of yellow trim. Ride height has been raised about half an inch, as batteries hang a little lower than the gas tank. Otherwise, it's the same lovable bulldog shape with wraparound glass, wide stance, and short overhangs that we've come to know and admire. A 7.4 kilowatt onboard charger allows for full level 2 charging in as little as 4 hours at home. DC fast charging can take you to 80% in just 35 minutes. Even with batteries being mounted where they are, there's still a surprising amount of passenger and cargo space. 7.5 cubic feet behind the split folding rear seat backs with a max of 25.8. Along with the same hipster vibe that always has most of us thinking we were mistakenly led into some club that is way too cool for us. The SE comes feature-rich too. Navigation on the central 6.5-inch display is standard, as are heated front seats, a dynamic digital instrument cluster with the customary EV-specific displays, and a leather multifunction steering wheel. There's also a different heater that uses less energy, and yes, there's still a sport mode in addition to mid and the 2 green modes. Government fuel economy MPGe ratings are 115 city, 100 highway, and 108 combined. For an almost perfect energy impact score, 0.2 barrels of yearly petroleum consumption, and no CO2 emissions. With 3 trim levels, the Mini SE starting price is just $30,750, minus whatever government incentives you can get from there. Mini says that makes it the most affordable premium EV you can buy, and we agree. With only just over a 100-mile range, we thought it would be difficult to get overly excited about this 2020 Mini Cooper SE EV. But as the BMW i3 is no longer sold here, we found the Cooper SE to be without a doubt the coolest of the current EV options. Much like every other Mini, the numbers don't always add up, but whenever you're behind the wheel, it's just plain fun.
A fierce nor'easter storm was on its way. With little to do except watch our hotel room ceilings leak, we ventured out onto the flooded roads in our quartet and found them all quite storm-worthy.
As the seasons change, so should our driving techniques. Now, most of us think we know how to drive in the rain, but the fact is we all could use a refresher. The numbers are startling, 1.2 million crashes every year. So here's our Stephanie Hart with some smart advice on driving in a downpour.
If you've ever been caught in a downpour while driving, then you know it can sometimes be pretty scary, especially if you start to lose traction, a situation commonly known as hydroplaning. It happens when a layer of water separates a vehicle's tires from the ground. Worn tires on wet surfaces will significantly increase your hydroplaning risk, although it can happen at speeds as low as 35 miles per hour, even with new tires. So if your car starts to hydroplane, what do? AAA has this advice.
Well, the first thing you should do is take your foot off the accelerator, right? That's going to shift more weight to the front of the vehicle and allow you to regain traction. What you don't want to do is to apply the brakes, right? So you want to stay off the brakes, allow your vehicle to slow down naturally, and if you end up losing control, then you want to stay off the brakes again and look and steer where you want the vehicle to go.
Conditions are most dangerous during the first 10 minutes of a heavy downpour. As we all know, it's extremely important to have good tires going into the rainy season. So, Kurt, how can people check their tires to make sure they're ready?
Well, one way you can do it is to use a tool like this, which is a tire tread depth measurer. Or you can reach in your pocket and pull out a quarter.
Okay, so show me how it works.
So this tool here, what you would do is extend the clip on the front, push it between the tire tread depth, and you can see we're at 130 seconds. Very unsafe tread depth here on this tire. As opposed to a new tire, 1130 seconds.
Okay.
So brand new tire, very old, worn, dangerous tire.
And how much does something like that cost?
$4.
$4, yeah. Okay. So easy to use.
Easy to use.
And how does the quarter work if you don't have that device?
The quarter works is what you would do is you would invert George Washington's head, stick it between the tread depth, and you would not want to see the top of his head,
okay.
right? So if you see the top of his head, that means you're at 4/30 seconds of an inch on tread depth, which means it's time to start shopping for tires.
If you don't need new tires, make sure to inflate your tires to the manufacturer's recommendations. They're normally found inside the driver's door. Underinflated tires aren't able to displace water like tires that are properly inflated, making driving in the rain potentially more dangerous. Maintaining visibility is an important part of driving safely in the rain. You want to make sure that your windshield is clean, also your windows, and you want to check your windshield wiper blades. The typical blades only last 6 months to a year, so you want to replace those as soon as you start seeing streaks build up on your windshield. Also, use your defroster. You don't want fog to build up on your windows. And finally, turn on your headlights. While you're at it, have your brakes serviced. It's also a good time to conduct a thorough checkup. We're talking battery, lights, and brakes. And if you don't have one, make sure you put together an emergency kit. In the end, it's all about driving with Mother Nature's worst in mind. After all, no one is invincible, whether you've been driving 50 years or 5.
With SUVs taking over the automotive world, it only makes sense that classic utilities would become a lot hotter in the collector car market. That has certainly been the case with Ford's Bronco. Not to mention, with Ford bringing their original Jeep fighter back to market, Bronco mania has never been higher. Having been around them most of his life, author Todd Zurcher knows a thing or two about original Broncos. And his book, Ford Bronco, A History of Ford's Legendary 4x4, is a must-read that will ensure that you do too.
There's a lot more to know about trailering than just hitching up and hitting the road. As always, Pat Goss has what we need to know down at Goss's Garage.
When it comes to trailers, there seems to be two eternal problems, and that's tires and wires. Let's start with tires. Trailer tires are different than car tires, and they normally require more pressure. Make sure that you always check the tire pressure and the condition of the tires before you hit the road. Also, if you have to buy replacement tires, well, trailer tires normally are stronger and built differently than car tires. So always buy trailer tires. And, you know, something like this, that'll ruin your whole morning. And that's nothing but low tire pressure. All right, second thing is wires, lights that don't work and brakes that don't work and so on. Well, lots of times that'll be the result of these old-fashioned crimp-on wire connectors and ends and so on. They work, they hold the wire together, but over time, what happens is moisture gets in there, it corrodes, that causes high resistance, and the high resistance causes the light not to work. All right. Now, the way you would check that is real simple. You would use a digital voltometer, such as we see here, and you would go on each side of the connector, and you would measure the resistance. The resistance must be 0, just like we're seeing here. If there's any resistance at all, that connector is bad. All right, but now don't replace it with that same old thing. Over here, we have a new style of connector. These have either a cement or a low temperature solder inside them, and the ends of them are heat shrink tubing. So you heat them using a heat gun, and what you wind up with is something that holds the wire together, electrically sound, and the ends of it are sealed with the heat shrink in order to keep moisture out. They do a far, far better job. Also pay particular attention to the gauge of the wire, the thickness of it. It must match from the tow vehicle all the way back to the part or whatever, the light or the brakes or whatever it's working. Got to be the same. And above and beyond all, do not use household twist-on wire connectors. They do not work around automobiles, yet we see them all the time. Do it right, and you'll have a lot of fun with your trailer. And if you have a question or comment, drop me a line right here at Motor Week.
Our Motor Week 40th Anniversary Car of the Week comes from the shark-nosed era of BMWs. This 1985 BMW 528i. Graham Balton is a Reisterstown, Maryland local who bought and imported this vintage beauty from Germany himself. Submit photos of your special ride for Car of the Week consideration to motorweek@pbs.org.
Sitting still is something we're not very good at here at Motor Week, so join us now for another round of Quick Spins.
Chevrolet is resurrecting another name from the past, the Trailblazer. But this 2021 Trailblazer has a much different mission than the mid-sized truck-based utility that was available from 2002 to 2009. This subcompact crossover is smaller than the Equinox, bigger than the Trax, and has a whole lot more style than either of them. Basic LS and LT trims are joined by the sporty RS, which features black trim, mesh grille, and chrome exhaust tips. And Active, which takes on a pseudo off-roader theme with more ground clearance, underbody protection, and sport terrain tires.
I have a hard time believing many buyers will opt for the active trim for anything more than just the rugged appearance. But in addition to all those cool visuals, the dampers are specifically tuned. So it may not be a literal trailblazer, but I'm sure it'll handle an already blazed trail just fine.
A flexible interior with up to 54.4 cubic feet of cargo capacity and best-in-class rear seat legroom means plenty of space for adventures on the weekend and carpool duty during the week. Same engine choices as its platform mate, the Buick Encore GX, either a 137 horsepower 1.2 liter or a 155 horsepower 1.3 liter, both 3-cylinder turbos. The 2021 Chevrolet Trailblazer is on sale now, with prices starting right at $19,000.
Mercedes-Benz's SUV history is longer than most luxury brands and more expansive as well. Currently in the entry-level position is the GLA, and it's all new for 2021. First on the scene will be this GLA 250, which features the CLA's 221 horsepower 2-liter turbo 4, yet does it one gear better in the transmission with an 8-speed DCT. Front-wheel drive is standard with 4MATIC available. More powerful AMG versions are soon to follow.
Comparing this new GLA to the previous one, right away it just feels more substantial. The old one was more of a raised hatchback and it felt that way. This one definitely feels like a small SUV. So there's that solid, safe feel, but then at the same time you get into the throttle and you have the eager turbo 4 with a lot of torque, and then you start taking some back roads and then it feels light again. So you really have a best of both worlds scenario here where it feels like an SUV but drives more like a car, which is exactly what Mercedes and really everyone else in this segment tries to do.
Adding to that more substantial feel is a much more customary SUV shape, though not to the extent of boxy brother GLB. The GLA is 4 inches taller than before and a ½ inch wider, yet won't be any harder to whip into a parking space as it's actually ½ an inch shorter in overall length. Lower body protection, roof rails, and 18-inch wheels are all standard. AMG line aero enhancements, 19-inch wheels, panoramic sunroof, and various exterior trim options are available. Interior changes are even more thorough and much appreciated. Not only is there an increase in space, but just about everything looks like a slightly scaled-down version of what you'll find in larger Benz utilities. That includes MBUX connectivity and the twin-screen dash. 7-inch screens are standard, but can be upgraded to these 10-inch beauties. Cargo space climbs from 11.8 to 15.4 cubic feet, with a max of 50.5. Available driving assistance systems allow for semi-autonomous driving, and optional augmented navigation makes it easier than ever to not miss your turn. Base pricing for the 2021 Mercedes-Benz GLA 250 is just over $36,000, with 4MATIC all-wheel drive just over $38,000. And we'll have more quick spins soon.
As the originator of the front-wheel drive minivan, it's no surprise that Chrysler would be the first to bring to market a hybrid minivan. But with so many families opting for crossovers these days, is a plug-in minivan a smarter alternative?
A lot has changed since Chrysler brought their car-based minivan to the world for the 1984 model year. That first Dodge Caravan and Plymouth Voyager revolutionized how families traveled and prompted competitors from numerous brands, both domestic and imported. Well, many of those rivals have come and gone, and of course, far more SUVs are sold today than minivans. Still, the Chrysler folks, now part of FCA, continue to bring innovation to the segment, including this 2020 Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid. It's not only the first hybrid minivan, but the first plug-in hybrid minivan at that. That means this PHEV has 16 kilowatt hours worth of batteries on board. Fortunately, the Pacifica had a huge amount of underfloor storage space to start with. But that does mean you'd lose a previous innovation, the stow-and-go seating system. Those batteries provide an electric-only range of 32 miles, enough to push overall range on a tank of fuel to over 500 miles. And they'll recharge in only 2 hours with an at-home Level 2 charger. It's all connected to a 3.6-liter Pentastar V6, converted to run on the Atkinson cycle. When EV range is depleted, the V6 then works in tandem with the 2 electric motors for maximum efficiency. Total system output is 260 horsepower, which is about 7 less than the standard Pacifica. But you won't notice it, as the electric motors more than make up the difference in feel. The standard Pacifica's 9-speed automatic transmission is replaced with an E-Flight variable transmission that has the electric motors built into it. Once behind the wheel, you use the same rotary gear selector as before. Most of us have come to appreciate its compact operation, though not everyone. But the proof is in the pudding. Government fuel economy ratings are 30 combined with an 82 combined MPGe rating. We average 31.2 miles per gallon. That's 30% better than the 23.7 that we got in our Pacifica long-term a few years ago. And as with all PHEVs, the more plugging in you do, the better off you'll be. Whether you get the hybrid or not, there are more standard features for all 20 Pacificas, including things families appreciate, like second-row sunshades. So the interior is still the most luxurious in the minivan class. You may lose the midship underfloor storage, but the non-stowing second row seems more comfortable. In fact, there's not a bad seat in the house, as even third-row passengers will be able to take in full-day road trips without a problem. Cavernous interior cargo space remains as well, 32.3 cubic feet behind the third row, 87.5 behind the second, and a whopping 140.5 with third row folded and second row removed. Updates to the gauge cluster keep you informed on power source and remaining range. Unfortunately, it's all automatic, so you can't choose when to use electric or gas only. Like most modern hybrids, changeovers between power sources are relatively seamless, with more audible cues than physical ones, as you can definitely hear the V6 when it fires up. We'll also give a shout out to the CVT transmission. CVTs are rarely a favorite of ours, but here we much prefer its smooth operation over the standard Pacifica's sometimes clunky 9-speed automatic. And if the world's first PHEV minivan weren't enough, Chrysler is also revisiting the all-wheel drive minivan, making it a Pacifica option for 2021. You can't get it as a hybrid, it's for gas-only models. It is an all-new mechanical system that should give you one more reason to stay aboard the minivan ship instead of jumping into the sea of SUVs. As for the hybrid, it's available in mostly the same trims as the non-hybrid, with the base hybrid Touring starting at $41,990. The price premium over non-hybrids varies with trim level, but can be largely nullified with various plug-in tax incentives where still available. Being first at something truly has its advantages, as there are no real competitors to be judged against. But if history repeats itself, the 2020 Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid could be the start of something bigger. Toyota has already announced a new Sienna Hybrid, although it has no plug. Regardless, when it comes to moving big families and their gear, Chrysler is still innovating and still leading the way.
Well, that's our show. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, for more Motor Week, including daily news updates, podcasts, and even complete episodes, cruise on over to pbs.org/motorweek. And I hope you'll join us next time. We'll test a sleeker and more efficient Hyundai Sonata, then hit the boost in a Porsche Macan Turbo. We'll get more sound advice from Pat Goss, then find out how the pros are taking a cut out of emissions, plus a fresh quick spin and updates from our long-term test fleet. Till then, I'm John Davis. We'll see you right here on Motor Week.
To learn more about Motor Week, television's original automotive magazine, visit pbs.org/motorweek. This program was produced by Maryland Public Television, which is solely responsible for its content.